just got mine.
Thank you. Casey, do you want to?
You got Richard's. Mine.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, he's got one. He's
Oh,
got
he's
one.
got yours, I see.
Okay, I call the meeting to order. First thing on the agenda is approval minutes of 2 sets of minutes, June 23rd, in the morning and evening sessions.
I'll make a motion, I guess, should we approve them separately, together?
The second meeting is pretty small, so
I make a motion to approve both sets of minutes, both morning and evening minutes of June 23rd.
I'll second that. Any discussion?
Yeah, under who was present at the meeting, you need to correct Dick Sears' spelling of his name. You have it as Spears.
How does he spell it?
He's Sears, not Spears.
Oh, okay.
Okay, anything else?
And then under the 275th anniversary event, what was it that you presented Dick with? Was it a liability rider on our policy?
Yeah, the town's going to provide the liability insurance so that they can use the CLMP lot.
So I think that that should be added in there because we actually presented him with a piece of paper showing that they had that liability rider.
I think he just signed it, didn't he, or he submitted it?
No, I gave it to him because he needed paperwork to get the event going, so.
For the for CLMP?
CMP,
Yeah.
all that stuff. So, anything else?
So what do you want added?
Whatever it was we presented, or we gave
How would you like it worded?
HVA.
We gave HVA a certificate of insurance for the, to use this CLMP lot in West Cornwall for the August 9th Riverfest. Okay, anything else? I think the minutes are, it's hard to shrink 2-hour meeting into 2 pages, but I think they're concise and good. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Next, this is the agenda. I have 4. One is paint care contract. Second is Cream Hill Lake Study Group. Third is,
Oh, I missed that. What was it?
first is paint care contract.
Okay.
Second is Cream Hill Lake Study.
Mhm.
Third is water tank at the Cornwall Bridge Green. And fourth is closing of the Colby property acquisition. Are there any other additions? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Next is communications. I have been talking to DEP Western Headquarters. We've had a problem before when the river level gets high like it is. It's deceptively, can be deceptive for novice boaters. So we've been playing phone tag with DEP Western Region to see whether they can't put some signs up saying, warning people that they should have life jackets and be experienced when they enter the river under these conditions. So you can't undo injuries, but at least maybe that gives people a heads up that it is, because you look at it and it looks, oh, I can do this, and it's a very strong current, especially for this time of year when it's so hot. So anyway, hopefully we can work something out and they'll come out and put a few signs up.
A couple of locations where
Yeah.
people typically put into the river.
Right. Okay, any other communications? public comments. Are there any public comments?
Gordon, I wanted to ask on behalf of the 275th Committee, at our meeting, you were there, we talked about making the town hall more attractive visually for the celebration, since everything will be down here. And you observed that the people commented on other town halls being better cared for. And you pointed out that they probably had garden clubs there. But the 275th Committee talked with Don Bachman and Tom Bechtel, and they are willing to do some cleanup work out there. And they asked only that if they did the cleanup work and pruning, could they leave the debris to be taken by the town crew, since they don't have a truck.
Okay, that's fine.
So, okay. So on behalf of the committee, thank you. And on behalf of Calhoun Cemetery, thank you for the additional soil.
More soil, right? You have all the holes filled in it?
We're working.
Good.
Touch and go on whether that was topsoil, but at least it was, I think it'll grow grass, which
It will
we
grow
really
grass.
appreciate. And also having the tree taken down, and we understand the other one's going to come down before the first.
Hopefully, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And so just to piggyback on that, when I was walking around the building tonight just to look at some of the landscaping, I noticed that a few of the downspouts
Mhm.
end at like half the building. So I'm imagining that as it rains and when we have these heavy rains, it's coming down these downspouts and just splashing onto the ground. We did a lot of work up top last year, fixing the gutters and some of all that, you know, the trim work and stuff up top. So are we just now creating a problem down lower with all of this water getting just forced down into the foundation and not directed away from the building? There are black pipes there, but they're just laying on the ground. They're not doing their job.
Right, yeah, there needs to be some work on the downspouts. So we'll
And
see when we
that's,
fit that in.
I mean,
Right.
probably sooner rather than later, otherwise you're just gonna create more of a problem with your footings.
I don't think the footings are in danger, but we can certainly list that as something needs to be
Do we
done.
have a wet basement here? Does
Not
water
because of that.
infiltrate?
The only time we have a wet basement is in the spring when the groundwater goes up. Not because of anything.
So anything that's coming out of these gutters that just hits the ground right at the
It's all
foundation
gravel.
isn't going down into the, it's
Correct.
not into
The
the
base-
basement, it's not
The
affecting the
basement is currently
cellars.
dry. It's been dry for over a couple of years. It's only rarely when we get spring floods that we have a problem. Not because of the downspout.
And one time the drain pipe,
It was clogged up.
100 feet behind the building was clogged up, so all the
Yeah,
water was
water
coming
collection.
toward the building.
Mhm.
Okay, any other public comments? First on the agenda is West Cornwall Firehouse generator bid. We sent bids out to 5 local contractors. We got one back from C&M Electric from Lime Rock, and reviewed the bids with Fire Marshal Stan McMillan and Fred Scoville, Fire Chief. And what they recommended was that we could, C&M quoted 3 different types of generators: 40 kW Winco, 40 kW Kohler, and a 50 kW Kohler. Both Fred and Stan preferred Kohler over Winco in their experience. They also felt that a 40 kW would be adequate for today's firehouse, but 50 kW would provide room for future expansion if they need to have other equipment down there. The current generator is probably 40 years old, so it's wise to think about the future. The Winco is $32,000 for the 40. The 40 Kohler is 33. The 50 kW Kohler is 38. We do have a $37,000 grant. Some of that grant is for Also includes propane tank, concrete, some in-kind services. We do have $25,000 in capital for fire department equipment, and Chief Scoville felt this would be a good use to, if we need extra money to install a 50 kW, it's his feeling that this would be an important piece of equipment to get right, as it's not just the firehouse, but also the emergency operations center for the town. So it's their recommendation that we go with the 50 kW. The town would have to run this out of capital projects, spend the money, and then get reimbursed by the state for 75% of the grant. And we do have to provide some in-kind services to dig the holes for the concrete work, tank, and also we can save $750 if we help unload the generator.
So the original grant that we have for this is for,
$37,000.
it's 75% of the 37,000? So we'd
Right.
receive approximately 30,000,
Yeah,
or 28,000 maybe?
yeah, 28,000.
And the 28 plus, you were saying there's approximately 25,000 in capital
For firehouse equipment.
for firehouse equipment, so we have the expenses covered.
Mm-hmm.
So do we need a motion
Yeah.
to accept one of these?
Right, and also I did talk to Paul Prindle today, the building official, who said C&M is an excellent contractor, very professional in his work, has done large generator installations successfully, and they are also the company that maintains the generators in West Cornwall and Cornwall Bridge Firehouse currently. So that's a good recommendation. So yes, if you would make a motion.
I'll make a motion that we accept the C&M bid for approximately $38,000 for the 50 kW Kohler generator.
Right.
As outlined in the bid that they.
Yeah. And some of that $38,000 also, there's pretty extensive wiring that has to be connected from the generator to the panel box. They have to put a sub panel in, so it's not just for the generators, for quite a bit of wiring and other electrical things in the firehouse.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So I will call up Mr. Kowalski, who's head of C&M, and ask him what his work schedule is. And it's our goal to get this in as soon as possible. And so we'll find out how his work schedule lines up with Jim's, because Jim has to do some back work on the job. Okay.
If you need help pulling the generator off the truck, I did it in mine.
Uh-huh.
I just slid it right off into my back of my pickup truck and then
Yep.
drove down the driveway. And, it's really easy.
Okay.
And I have
KW is yours?
50K.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I have everything, you know.
Good.
So
All right. We'll keep that in mind.
it's not a big deal. It's very easy.
Good. Next we have, we received today 3 bids on doing bituminous concrete work this summer in the town, 3 different locations. The apparent low bidder is AJ Construction from, they're from Brookfield. They did the work up on Great Hill. They came in with $303,690. Metcalf Paving came in with $106,000, and Waters Construction, who's also worked in town, came in at $112,000. So this is to grind up and regrade Bolton Hill Road and Allen Road up on the top of Mohawk, as well as put some asphalt in place on Wright Hill Road. So the bids actually, A and J, were slightly more than Metcalf for the asphalt, but their reclamation and grading was significantly less than Metcalf, so their overall price of A and J construction was less. So they put a lot of, they did the paving up on Great Hill from Hollow Street to
The upper part of that?
the upper part, so we know they do a good job. I'm glad we had 3 competitive bids. They said they had to really sharpen their pencils because they know it's competitive.
I would say that those are 3 relatively close bids, but
Yeah.
definitely separated.
Yep.
Jim had returned your call and he said he
Yep.
concurred with you on. the-
AJ?
Yeah.
Right. Good.
They were all bidding for the same volume of
Material,
material.
700 tons. How's Florida?
Got sunburned.
Poor boy.
Yeah.
That's
Day-
right.
Day 1. Careful, careful.
Glad you were trying.
Would this work be done, what's the time frame of this work?
This work hopefully will be done in August, so this will be done after the 275th
Right.
and before the Ag Fair. Is our goal. Didn't want to have it torn up and get thunderstorms
And not paved.
and not paved by the time the festivities
Yeah.
start.
You said 700 tons,
No, 1,100 tons.
1,100 tons.
Yeah, they're both bidding out 1,100 tons. So I'll make a motion that we accept AJ Construction bid.
I'll second that. I just like to look at them right now.
Yeah, I put the totals there on that piece of the totals of, because some of them bid it slightly differently, but then we did the math to come up with the total bids.
You gotta do your totals to come up with a number on this one, right?
Right,
That's what you were saying, that's what those are over there?
right. But his asphalt price is almost higher than the other bid. Third bid.
And they're all using the same material.
Yes.
It's all the other work, I mean, both of these are quoting the same price for the concrete, 85.50, 85.70, yes. We concur that it's approximately 6,000 square yards,
Yes.
that's what we measured on.
Yeah, well, the bid went out and it said you have to grind all of Bolton Hill Road and then the length of Allen Road.
Had we
So-
measured it, or was it their responsibility?
I think it's their responsibility to see the road and see how big it is. But in the bid, it says do these roads, so.
Okay. So somebody measured the road and
Right.
width and,
I think Jim may have actually met with some of these contractors for sites. Okay, any more discussion?
do they have a total on, this is the only one that actually has a total on it.
Correct.
Right, you're-
Right, so
But
when,
we had to figure the total.
right, well, we figured,
Right,
so
yeah.
today's meeting, AJ wasn't there. So when we opened up AJ, these guys said, oh, that's, you don't have to bother open mine up. But anyway, so we worked through to estimate what these reclamation prices are, and they agreed on this. If you did it in the same format, this would be the price for doing their representatives. Okay,
Brookfield, you said?
what? Brookfield, yeah. It is a project up on Great Hill, which I think was several $1 million or something. I said, well, what are your references? We just did 24 million down in Waterbury. I said, well, guess you can do it then. So they're a pretty big operation. Okay, any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
West Cornwall wastewater has gotten some correspondence this month. Heard from David Colbert, chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission, who wrote the who writes us saying he's been asked by the by the EDC to write us regarding the advisability of Cornwall studying the possibility of community wastewater treatment system, the town 2010 town plan, economic development section recommends the following for West Cornwall. We have the letter, so he's in favor, and I assume speaking for the Planning and Zoning Commission of the town taking on the study. Janet Carlson, the EDC, also sent us a letter, as did Dick Sears, writing for, in his capacity as a citizen in HVA. I did meet with Ian Ingersoll a couple of times and have given you some paperwork that was handed out by Ann Strout, who is an engineer for the Bureau of Water Protection and Land Reuse of DEEP. I've talked to Ann this week. And we all agree it's a complicated issue, but one that should be investigated.
Well, so Dave, as part of planning and zoning, was leaning more towards a central water supply than a central sewer.
Well, I think
According
at
to
this
this
point,
letter.
nobody can tell what makes sense without somebody really going and looking at topography and looking at the usage and looking at the potential uses. But the town plan does say more central water should be considered.
I think they're both options, and they both have their ups and they both have their downs. And both should be considered. And at this point now, we've had some conversation with Torrington Area Health.
Right, and I talked to Kathy Weber. She knows we would like a map, and there's a whole procedure you saw in your handout of how this is usually addressed. There is a DEP program that deals with actual or potential groundwater or wastewater problems. The procedure is that once the town commits to doing this, we would hire a consultant, asking them for an RFQ, so we ask them for their qualifications, you hire a consultant. Then that's done through the QBS system, so this is all regulated by the state, because obviously the state has to sign off on the product, and also they have a grant program where they pay 55% in the municipality, or according to Ian, there may be some private people that will put money into this. But the state would reimburse the town 55% of the study. So in order to get that reimbursement, you have to follow their procedures, and eventually they have to sign off, as does we have to work with the Director of Public Health, which is the Tarnier Health District. So you hire this consultant, then you fill out an application or the town fills out the application for a study. It says the scope of the work, which delineates the area to be studied. It also talks about what are you looking at. Some places they have a failing sewer system. We don't have a failing sewer system. We don't have an actual problem. We have a potential problem, which you said having a potential problem also qualifies you for the grant. Ann also said that most of these grants are fairly automatic. One of the great unknowns is how much does this study cost? And so you hire this person that you feel is the most qualified person, and they DEP and the Tarnier Health can help us through the application process. So we hire the most qualified person, hopefully. And then we work on the application for the scope of the work, and then the person will then evolve how much this study is going to cost. So, and I'm not the expert on this, but then we apply, say it costs $100,000, we apply for a $100,000 grant, we get 55% back. And this would have to be run through capital projects program. The town has to allocate the money. There's no money for studies in any budget at this point. And that's, there's pages and pages of checklists and things, but that's my brief executive summary. And Ann and Kathy are both available to come out and talk about this whole process further. Third week in July. Dates that are good are the 21st or the 22nd in the morning. That's a Tuesday or Wednesday.
And this would be to go over the process.
Go over the process. And then the other things out there, because people are on vacation, so we're starting, we've got to talk to this person, we've got to talk to that person. So there is a list of towns. One of the things I want to do is talk to a town that's gone through a similar process to get, it's a little bit open-ended at this point, but apparently there are other towns, especially by the shore, that have gone through something like this, and find out what their experiences are. So we have some answers to the obvious questions. Having a wide range of costs isn't what I like to have going into a proposal. The only advantage we have is we don't have a leaky system. We have a potentially undersized, under capacity overall setup in the village area.
So, I'm trying to understand this. I think at the end, we know how much the study is going to cost. By the
Correct.
time we get to that point,
Yep.
we've determined somehow somebody's bid on a study of a certain amount.
Mm-hmm.
So we're applying for a grant for a certain amount.
An important thing is
For
for what
55% of that student.
Right.
an important distinction is, because we ran up with this QBS thing when we were doing the school project, that they were all in favor of that as a way to hire an architect. That they want, if the state's going to participate in funding this, they want the most qualified person to do this, which may or may not be the least expensive person to do this. So that's one of the things they get for putting in 55%, which is somewhat different than what we would do if we were doing everything ourselves.
Right, I
So-
understand.
But I think it's very important, because it has to go through them that we take time to understand the process, because it's gonna be complicated, it's gonna be a bunch of money, and people are gonna have a lot of questions about it. And also did say, she was very good, that, you know, we have obvious issues there with the brook running through the middle of the village. We have a fairly small population base. We have a river there, which is considerable importance.
I mean, how do you determine the scope of the study? Because part of the purpose of the study is to determine the scope.
Well, that's what we would rely on Tarnier Health or these other towns or DEP. Because what Ann also said is, there may be a solution to this that we here don't know about yet. I mean, you have you maybe just put in a public water system. Maybe you put in the standard sewer system. Maybe you have community septics like they have at Bonnybrook, where you join a bunch of houses together and you have 2 or 3 super septic systems scattered all over the village. There may be, somebody at some point mentioned incineration. I don't know, so what we would do is get somebody that would have, you know, experience in a bunch of different alternatives, because it's not, you know, an incredibly easy site to work on. And so that's one of the things, if we decided to go with this, that we would look for somebody that's done work on similar situations successfully.
And the next step is this July 21st, 22nd meeting with Torrington Area
Right.
Health and
And people from whoever wants to come, and, you know, make it a public meeting. Anybody want to chip in, we can pass a hat. Or, I mean, anybody that expresses interest is welcome to come. And certainly, you know, at some point the Board of Finance has to be involved, but we have to know more, I think, before we go to a town meeting or the Board of Finance. But there certainly seems to be interest in at least doing a study to see if there is a good solution to what's been identified as a problem in the village.
We
Or
will
not.
get estimates on what the study would cost us at some point.
Well, I think that
Or if they just
we,
get to
we,
run,
what?
or they're just gonna have free reign to just
No,
run.
obviously and again, there is a QBS website, if we wanna, we can look at that. There's links. Did I send you the thing?
QBS is...
Quality-based selection,
Oh, quality based, of course.
as opposed to dollar-based selection.
Right,
There are,
the most qualified.
I think I did I send you the checklists and the links, and there's a bunch of,
Yeah, she had a lot of different stuff.
Right.
in that email.
it's pretty good. She looked up QBS, and what you find is, first thing you find is a bunch of guides to quarterbacks. So you actually have to do quality-based selection, if you found, unless you want to see some cute quarterbacks. Anyway, so that's the information. I mean, I think it's something we should try to push ahead on and
Well, you gotta take
educate
steps,
about it.
yeah, you gotta take steps forward, but I think a very important thing to inform the public that it's a long, slow process, and there won't be any construction happening in 2016.
No, and as I said, I want to talk to some other municipalities that have gone through something like this, so we can get that. And, you know, there's obviously questions for Ann that we have to refine about what happens if our $50,000 turn out to be a $300,000 study. I mean, I can't believe that we can't get some answers for some reasonable money. I mean,
One would
Yeah.
like to believe.
yeah, I mean, it's not, we're not doing East Hartford or something, we're doing West Cornwall, so.
A couple hundred people at best.
Right,
A couple
I mean,
hundred
I'm
units at
thinking like
best.
30 or 40 hookups
Right,
at
yeah.
this time. I mean, there's another component of this whole thing too, is with planning and zoning, one of the things they're gonna look at is what is your future demand? Are they gonna rezone? If you put in a set system, what are their projections for growth in West Cornwall? Similar to your generator at the firehouse, are we gonna put in Riverside condominium complex, a shopping center? I mean, now's the time where the town has to think about some of these things that have been inhibited by the lack of a septic system, and because we have to have some idea of what capacity we're designing, and it's not just meeting the rather modest things right now, but if the town's gonna shell out some money, we should have some planning stuff too to find out. You know, she said there you can go all the way up to the school. And I said, unlikely. You know, off the cuff, didn't look like that was happening, and
That's a long way.
that's a long way for, you know, our kids. I think we're fine up at school. So anyway, so there is some of all that, and do we get a, I mean, most of these towns are governed by a WPCA, Water Pollution Control Authority, which we don't have, which she said then defaults to us. Do we get a group together to manage the study, input it? Because we could spend a good part of every 2 weeks talking about it, which isn't bad, but anyway, those are all things that are out there. But, I'd like to get our questions for her. I'll do some research. We've got a couple of weeks. Try to find, and get some obvious answers to things. And as I said, this application can happen for a potential problem as opposed to an actual problem.
But again, an important decision will have to be made when there is some determination as to what the QBS is going to cost.
Right.
And whether we want to spend the money or not spend the money, or
Right, and
present it to
ultimately
the Board
that
of
has to
Finance.
go to, yeah, I mean, it's gonna have to go to the Board of Finance, town meeting. I mean, if Ian can raise all the money, 45% is fine, but at this point, we don't even know 45% of what. I mean, she was saying 100, 200, somewhere.
Right.
Seems like a lot, but everything seems like a lot. Okay, so anyway, I think, any preference Tuesday the 21st or Wednesday the 22nd?
Either way with me.
Equally good? Okay. So,
You'll let us know what you do.
right, I will,
And it's gonna be a public meeting.
absolutely.
So you can let me know by next Monday?
Yeah, hopefully.
If it's decided by then.
Yeah, it sounded like everybody, I mean, as I said, those are the, Ian's gonna be away, there's gonna be a bunch of people away, but Ann and Kathy, I think, are available, maybe Tom Stansfield, maybe somebody else from Dartmouth Health. And so let me just find out what's the best date, so I should be able to do that.
Either in this building or maybe in Ian's building,
Yeah,
even if he's away.
Outside.
do it in the park. Yeah, I don't know.
The weather may not be cooperative.
You could have it at the Wish House Gallery.
There you go.
Okay, anything else on West Cornwall wastewater? Next is highway union negotiations. We have been working successfully with highway union negotiations, negotiators. Met several times. This morning we reached a tentative agreement, which would be a 3-year contract, establishes wages at 2.75, 3%, increases the employee premium share for health insurance some other minor items. We are also going to reopen health insurance after we look at, state just passed a plan that allows municipal employees to join the state employee plan, hopefully for better benefits or less money. So we'll be looking at that next spring, cooperatively, see if we can't get a better deal. And I think everything went pretty well. Reached a fair agreement, so is there a motion to authorize me to sign this agreement?
You sure I'm fine with
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. So we'll need to send a signed copy back to the union. 275th anniversary is proceeding along. Was some question about financing items, but that seemed to be resolved at the last meeting and subsequent conversation with the Cornwall Association agreeing to pick up the expenditure of some small flags, which were listed in the town budget at $1,200. So.
Gordon, I have a question about the paint the town thing. There's been no allotment for finance for that, and my wife is not willing to foot the bill this year, so she'd like to say that there probably won't be, and it's not even in the event calendar.
All right, well, I think you'd have to bring that back to the committee to do that.
On the 270, okay.
We just
I just wanted
respond to their things, but I
Yeah.
would bring that up. And what was the expenses last year running that?
I don't know, she paid it all, so I don't,
It was the advertising and things, and she said she talked to Dick Sears, excuse me. And so the committee has asked her, has told her that they don't expect her to do it.
Well, so that was scheduled to be on the 9th, or when was that supposed to happen?
Yes.
So it wasn't there, so whatever, I think that has to go back to the
275th.
275th committee to,
Just want, because she wrote a little note here on my agenda, so.
okay?
Wanted me to-
that. So what was the financing issue that was talked about?
Well, there were some things that came up, publishing, and there's a second order of t-shirts, and the money for the t-shirts had already been spent, and so that was an issue, but now that's been resolved because money has been, that was thought to have to be town expenses, not town expense, so the budget is back on track for $20,000. So, seems to be fine.
Additional sources of revenue
Right.
were located.
We're, moving around.
Additional sources or?
Well, the Cornwall Association is paying for all the things relating to the flag contest. And some of that money was in the $20,000 that, in the budget that was presented for the town. So if the Cornwall Association pays for all that, it will absorb the several unanticipated bills that they were looking at.
So what happened with the income that was generated from the sale of the first t-shirts? Were they allowed to use that in the end?
The money that went into, that was raised by selling t-shirts, roughly $800 has come back to the town. That's gone back to the general fund. If this $1,200 money wasn't taken over by the Cornwall Association, the committee could come back to the town and ask to maybe use some of that t-shirt money. Right now, the only thing that the town has authorized, this board and Board of Finance has authorized, is $20,000. If we use that $20,800, then they have to come back to us. So it's much cleaner just to stay at the $20,000 level instead of going $20,800. So it seems like it's all meeting the requirements for municipal expenditures and getting done what is needed to get done.
But to answer your question, if I'm understanding correctly, the t-shirt money just goes into the general fund, just as beach pass money just goes into the general fund. It's not earmarked for the beach.
Right,
Or it's not earmarked
right.
for the 275th. It's
Right.
just income on the income side
Right.
as opposed to expenses on the expense side.
Right.
I think
There's a
that's-
brick wall between the expenses and the expenditures, so. Anyway, so it seems like that's on track.
Oh, that's good.
Okay, bridge meeting, Roger Kane is scheduled a bridge meeting, I think I sent you a copy of that, that's tomorrow, 10 o'clock. Couple of consultants. He has entertained to come and look at bridge at the gravel bank and Flat Rocks Road to do some geotechnical work for us, so that's the first step. So they're gonna come here, and then he's gonna show them some sites, and probably, he's not gonna use QBS, but he's gonna get some proposals to get us some geotechnical information
How
on
many
those
firms
sites.
are possibly
I
going to
think
show
it's
up?
a couple he's been working with.
And these are firms that would do some drilling presumably
Mhm.
to make some
Right.
determinations. We're gonna get a bid on what they're gonna charge to drill
Right.
X number of holes and give us some understanding of what it would, footings requirements for footings for.
Right. So if we have, if we down the road go out to replace these bids, we can send out bids packages with a geotechnical report, as this is the area in which you're building your bridge,
Right.
which is still a year or something down the road, but at least we'll be moving forward on that.
So you'll be out on Flat Rocks tomorrow?
They will be, I'm not sure I'm joining them for all the
Okay.
festivities,
Because
but.
there's quite the beaver dam going on that spillway right now.
Really? Oh. Have to get up there.
Yeah,
Is it flooded out the pond?
it's starting to back up. I've asked the homeowner if she, had any interest in someone to trap it or anything like that, and I haven't heard anything back from her,
Huh.
so.
Who owns it now?
Well, I asked
They're-
Art Shore's daughter,
Okay.
her dad. I didn't ask the other folks in the blue house.
Right, okay.
But he's done some damage.
So is that backing up the lake and the pond?
It's starting to, yeah,
Huh.
you can see where it's higher than where it used to be,
Right,
yeah.
okay, we'll keep an eye on that. Next thing to do with water is Trout Unlimited. It's presented us with a plan. And speaking of water, which I relayed today over to inland wetlands, they want to put in a thermal refuge for trout near the Millbrook Bridge out in the Housatonic River due north of the covered bridge. They have been working with DEP. And we're,
One of the things I thought, the last line, it is likely the project will take 2 years to complete.
permitting, I think they're trying to put in an excavator in the Housatonic River, which I'm surprised they could get it would only take 2 years to get that permission. But,
Does that mean 2 years to get permitting or 2 years to actually do the project? Once they,
let's see,
No, it's project, it includes a topographic survey, hydraulic modeling, and the acquisition of the necessary project permits. So all of that plus the construction is 2 years.
so. I think my initial concern was they're gonna put a big dig out around the bridge, and I didn't like that.
Just the hole?
It's basically like a hole, there already is one. In order to get the bridge built quickly, we had to agree to put a thermal refuge near the bridge, so it's basically just a pool,
Pool, yeah.
a deep pool where the water stays cool, much to the happiness of the trout. So apparently they're not happy enough, so they need to put in a bigger pool, closer to.
I'd like a pool too.
Spa.
Spa,
Trout
yes.
spa.
I mean, we ran everything we did 2 years ago, 4 years ago,
Yeah,
we ran by DEEP,
Right.
along with several other acronyms,
right.
for approval and built something.
I think that was, yeah,
Uh,
They were
fairly
state
subs-
agency, you change your mind.
that might be a little more of a,
That was actually starting part on the outlet. And Don Meisel from the Fisheries Division was out there for the bridge. They were talking about the steps needed to do this, so they were talking about preliminary steps that they could do as part of bridge construction. And this is just continuing the process for the ultimate, this is all about, habitat restoration for trout and hoping, they can get, if they're coming down Millbrook and wherever. But there was some armoring when the bridge was done, they went out into the water and that was
I
for.
understand, so my question is, at that time, wouldn't that have been a good time to have put more large rocks or larger large rocks, boulders?
They would have had to get a lot of additional permits.
right.
Yeah.
We were able to operate ours under emergency decree, whereas this is kind of optional. Plus, it also looks like yes, I'm missing something. They're going, well,
Where's the bridge? Is that,
this is the bridge here. This is 173 feet, I believe, is the
is
bridge.
that the bridge itself right there or
I
down?
think
Yeah,
so.
well, here where you can see the roof line.
I think so. So,
I mean,
and then the other thing that's happened too is she talks about somewhere because of the water coming out, there's a debris field here on the Cornwall side of the bridge. So they can dig out some of the stuff that's been accumulating. I mean, it's made the channel, it's pushed the channel out to the Sharon side.
this,
Right.
that's already been put there.
Yeah,
What does this mean, eliminate cross vein?
well, I think that's I think that's the water that's going in and it goes in here or something, I don't know. But my other thought too is jumping ahead, we did hear that we got a new renewal of the sidewalk grant. So my thought is to meet down in West Cornwall with Roger Kane to look at sidewalk locations or feasibility now that the snow's melted. And some morning or afternoon or whatever, and we could look at this at the same time. This is a 2-year thing. I don't think we don't have to make a decision. I've shared the news with Inland Wetlands. Do they have any great ideas?
Well, Roger was really the one that knew the most about it because he worked the most on the
Right.
project and watched what they were doing, so he would be the perfect person.
Right, so that's my thought is,
There's water coming in here. And it ends up
I don't
in here.
think so.
Do you know what that is, Karen, this cross vein at the top?
No, I don't, but
I think
Eliminate a
their
cross
whole
vein.
deal,
I think what they're trying to do with trout and to restore habitat is, the currents have to be right, the size, the temperature of the water, all of these things are taken into account to try and optimize the conditions, and I think they're looking at, how the water flow is, how to make water flow differently, and stop some of the erosion that's been caused, some of the swirls and whatever, to kind of restore it to something that these fish are gonna be happier in. So I think it's a big project. When they talk about, doing the surveys and stuff, they're looking at everything, including how the river's actually, the currents are going across, and et cetera. I think that's what it's all related to.
their concern is that before that archipelago that sticks out there now was put in place as part of the bridge construction, their concern was that the upstream warm currents from the Housatonic would go in and mix with the cooler water from Mill Brook. So that whole thing that sticks out is to keep the cool, sparkling water from Cream Hill Lake cool as much as possible in this area. So I think that's what they're going to try to do, is build that up so the water stays cool, put in these fish spas, and that will be better. Although currently that's a little problematic because probably gone over that. But anyway, that's my thought, is we can go all down there and scratch our heads with Roger in the near future. So, does that work?
We're gonna take
How much, do you guys have
60,000
plans this summer, or do you just want to be every day for the rest of the month?
So they'll just take that giant excavator and go right through that new park we built.
That's right. Fix that up. No,
I
they're,
think that's why the permit is going to take so long, because those questions are gonna be out.
Well, I mean, the park's only one of the issues.
Right.
For
Yeah.
sure.
And they got, I think they want to put it in the Lock Brothers. That's the easiest place to get in. And obviously, it's got to be low water, which we don't have.
No, of course.
So then, what about next Tuesday or Wednesday? Does that work? Just to look at these two things?
Walk around the sidewalks and the, we gotta look on that one. I'm not sure when I'm supposed to.
I figure July is better than August, you know.
I feel like I'm supposed to be
Possible?
somewhere. Yeah, I mean, we can write it
Possible.
down.
Anyway,
If I can't
I'll
make it,
see
I
Roger
can't.
tomorrow. Is there any,
First thing in the morning is better than mid-morning. you know.
okay, like what's a good time?
You know, like 8:30, 9
Okay.
instead of 11, you know.
Right. Okay, we can do that, and we'll do that for the other meeting also, 9 o'clock.
You're looking at next Tuesday, you said?
Tuesday, Wednesday, somewhere in there, depending on what Roger can do.
So that's 14, 15?
14, 15. So,
How long will
I'll
that
write Tracy Brown back saying that we are researching this issue with our experts. Okay, any other thoughts on Trout Unlimited in West Cornwall? Let's see. Next is herbicide spraying on railroad right-of-way. I got a couple of phone calls in the last 2 weeks of people concerned about the herbicide being applied along the railroad right-of-way. Initially, this came from people on River Road in West Cornwall. Issues were wells were close to the track, and then second questions were vegetation that was killed along the track, and then vegetation that was killed off the right-of-way. So,
It killed the plants that my wife put in the planters in front of the railroad square sign. That, she just
I mean, it
Wow.
was-
wrote that, yeah.
It was
So-
pretty, it's pretty wide swath.
and when were the plants alive, Richard? Do you know? 'Cause I mean, there's some
I don't-
question of when the spraying
I don't-
happened.
I don't know.
Because somebody said they saw railroad employees going through West Cornwall with hazmat suits and big wand sprayers last fall.
Huh.
And,
I just know
Like-
Bianca
like-
left a note on my agenda about
right,
it, so.
so,
She's good.
yeah.
Maybe did she forget to water the plants? Is that?
No, she said that they killed, she believe me, Bianca waters those plants.
Maybe the
Water and
soil.
So can you just ask her when
Yeah.
they, I mean, I'll say here, but
Yeah.
when did they die? Because there's some question, well, anyway, we'll.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to take a ride up north of West Cornwall,
I
it's,
took a ride tonight, it's
it's,
a pretty
it's,
big area.
it's
Yeah.
dramatic. A lot of pine trees are dead. The other thing, we as a town, is that they're dead trees, and those dead trees are in our right of way, so guess who gets to pick up the tree when it falls inevitably onto our road? There's also pretty clear, heavy, and talking to longtime residents, this is different than has happened before. This is, I would say, yeah, a lot more.
They went really wide.
Really wide.
When you
And-
drive
And
up through the
yeah, and
road.
even the
It's
branches,
big,
the tree
and I
branches,
want-
you can just see how they're just dead.
Are they in their right of way, most of
Well,
where they
I
are?
didn't survey it, but they have killed trees on the far side of stone walls, on the end of River Road, and what people have told me is the right of way is the stone wall. So they're on the other side of the tree, trees are dead 40 feet up in the air.
Yeah.
pine trees, just like 100 feet, 200 feet. And these are maples, pines, willow, flowers, just everything dead. I mean, where there used to be little lilies along the side of the road, dead. Dead, nothing growing there at all. So I talked to my spraying friends, and they said, well, I want to ask, so my thoughts are, one, to ask railroad, what did they do? What did they spray? When did they spray? Talk to our state officials, because this is a state-owned right-of-way. It's not owned by the railroad, and they have to be operating under some lease. I would suggest that probably whatever they sprayed probably has some federal okay somewhere, but it still creates a bunch of questions for the people living right next door to the spray, because it's a dead zone right now.
How far down is it? Is it all the way to
Well,
the Milford?
I haven't gone south, but I've gone up through North Canaan, and it's right through Falls Village all the way to North Canaan, right next to swamps, right next to the river. It's just dead.
All the way down?
All the way up to North
You could
Canaan.
call,
I mean,
the
you could
selectmen-
hike down
you could
to,
call the selectmen of Kent and find
right.
out if it's there.
I mean, it's more pronounced where we are because it's all trees. But how a tree 10, I mean, it's a stretch of the imagination how a tree 10 feet off the right of way is going to be a problem for the train. A little bit, 'cause
It will be now if it's dead.
yeah, more of a problem. They've just created a bigger problem because now you got to deal with all these probably toxic dead trees up and down the right of way. So I just think it's something, as I said, I want to talk to the railroad. I like a railroad. I like railroads in general, but I think there needs to be much better community consideration, and this is not a really good example. And I want to talk to our state representatives and ask them if they would come up and drive up and down River Road, and I mean, it's a beautiful stretch of area now. There's dead trees, pine trees that are 50 feet tall, up and down one of the most beautiful roads in Connecticut. So, any other thoughts on that? I mean, I just think that's a place to start. We can't.
Can you ask if they've cut back on cutting? Because they used to do a lot of that.
Right. Obviously, this is thought to be a new way to deal with it, but.
Yeah, it might be
See if
cheaper,
there's
or
any-
their equipment broke down, or who knows.
And, also, did they get DEP permits to put a bunch of this stuff right next to the river and through a bunch of water courses?
Gordon, if I could ask you to ask the question
Okay.
about, as a wetlands enforcement officer, I do get some notification as to, pesticide or herbicide applications in ponds, and that whole process has become much higher regulated in terms of towns being notified about much smaller scope projects than this, and there is a regulatory process so that people in the town can, in the case of the pesticide application, if there's concerns, that they can raise it. For instance, what goes on, what was going on up on Town Street, when you get that information and you can start to ask questions. But in such an application, where is the DEP obligated to notify someone in some capacity? And I would think it
Right.
would be.
If they get to go through town in hazmat suits, why was there no notification of any of the townspeople?
Right.
Why didn't Bianca get a chance to save her flowers before they blasted them with who knows what?
Yeah, and if I get notified about a pond, you would think the first selectman
Good.
would get notified about it.
So you're saying you did not get notification either?
I would think that this would have to be a fairly healthy machine, pressurized machine sprayer to get that far up.
Right.
Or you're gonna be on the train.
It's not just a little spot here and there. I mean, it's dramatic.
Well, it may not have been, probably was just train mounted, some fashion.
Guys with wands, 14-foot wands.
Yeah.
Were they on the
Say,
train, or were they
They didn't
walking?
even have wands, they may have just
Drive
been,
on tomorrow. It's
Were they
fine.
walking, or were they on the
The
train?
question came up tonight is whether that could have been actually done on the train.
Yeah,
I
that's
think,
what we're wondering.
I would think it's on the train, it's so uniform. mean, it seems like something that would be like mounted on a machine.
The same level all the way down.
Right, going down, and then, and maybe somebody had
But they cut
wands.
They did cut it back by the high school. They followed it back, so they didn't,
I mean, the wands may have been an additional thing to, where they weren't gonna just like
Closer.
right,
wind, make it full throttle.
But to answer your question, had I got notification?
no notification.
So you're gonna write a letter to the train,
I think we'll get right on the,
um,
we'll get right on the internet telephone thing and find out what's going on. Maybe write a letter too. Do everything.
yeah, whatever it
But I
takes,
mean,
whatever it takes to get the answers.
I'm curious, I mean, we're gonna have to learn a lot more about what happened there. Okay, anything else on that? So, next thing, we did get, we did hear from our friends in Department of Housing that enclosed you will find the Main Street Investment Fund Program Notice of Grant Award extension until December 31st, 2015 for the Cornwall Village Centers projects CB and WC sidewalks. Funding for this time period is indicated and the project must be completed. All funds drawn down by the end of the date indicated on the attached award. No further extension will be granted and unused funds will be returned to DOH.
How much would we get?
$70,000.
And none of that can be used for that engineering, right?
Correct. So the thought from Roger is we may ask for RFPs, go to some sidewalk companies and just say, here's, we like a 4-foot sidewalk here, between here and there, give us a proposal, you engineer it, you make it work, show us your regular things. I mean, Metcalf, I think, is putting an asphalt sidewalk in at the school going down a hill, which is much more challenging than these two sites. So my thought is we would go and revisit these sites, see if we want to go ahead with these projects, maybe meet with neighbors in West Cornwall, and look at Cornwall Bridge also, see if we want to do that or not. But now's the time to sort of decide which way to go on any of these projects.
What was the deadline now?
The deadline now is,
End of the year.
it is December 31st. So I need a letter to, I need a letter authorizing me to sign this extension. So I need a motion.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. We're back to public comment. Any public comments?
Do you know how much has come in on donations for the 275th?
What?
How much have you gotten in donations?
We have, I'm not sure what the numbers are, I haven't checked in. They've been modest, if at all. So,
You said you got 1,000, but
That
that
was
was
pledged.
not that was not to be used. It was only to reduce the town's contribution,
right,
right?
that was what was pledged. I'm not sure if we've gotten the 1,000 yet.
So nothing else has come in?
Right.
I have a question. The board has had litigation and tax delinquency in executive session for months now, and I'm wondering what your success is, and if the success hasn't been what you expected, are you changing your strategy?
Town has a retained counsel, and we have had 2 long-term properties sold, so we have collected the list. The list is shrinking, so I think we're going to, got a proposal from our counsel on pursuing things, so I think we're doing fine.
So have you collected half, or a third, or 2/3?
Well, I don't want to go into,
I didn't ask for amounts, I asked for percentage.
well, I mean, as we all know, the vast majority of this uncollected taxes are revolving on the Burkhart property.
But I understand you're not pursuing that, I
Well,
thought you said.
we are, informally pursuing some options on there. So we haven't really launched our recovery yet.
Mhm.
So we're fine. We're working with the tax assessor. We've identified a couple of properties that we are seeking collections on, and there's two of, as I said, or actually three probably within the last year have changed hands that we've collected the back taxes on. That happened, so we're doing okay.
Okay. And the other one was, you know, the River Road parking was discussed in open session, and all of a sudden it went to executive session. Why was that?
Because we got correspondence from a attorney talking about it, and we have advice from our attorney on how to answer some concerns. So that's what we're discussing.
And when it's decided, will you discuss it in open session?
Absolutely, same way we did with the union contract tonight. I mean, we are as open as feasible.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other public comments?
We got a couple of
Yeah,
questions.
now we have a bunch of additions. Pain care contract, this was reviewed by Pearlie Grimes. I talked to him on the telephone. He had several concerns. One, that we had insurance was okay. I ran it past the insurance company, and they said they were okay with this. They just had done insurance for another municipality on this. He also suggested that the program be limited to town of Cornwall residents or taxpayers only, and also that we have a DEP permit, because everything we do at the transfer station has to be approved by DEP. So we put calls into DEP. We got, who did we get? The Wildlife Division. Their phone system got all messed up this week.
Fisheries division.
We got the Fishery Division. We wanted to talk about the paint, and then we got the paint when we talked about the fish. But anyway, we do have a call into the permit person, Judy, who said the modification person is away for a couple days or something.
Yeah.
So I think we're close. So
Will we have to end up submitting a new site plan with the new container?
I hope not. I hope we can do something very,
Well, yeah. I mean,
Didn't sound like you had to submit anything now.
well, that-
right.
It would be nice if we don't have,
Right.
but DEP is the one that we are permitted from.
What we don't want to do is have them come out here and see a new program that they don't know about. So we do need to check with them to make sure
Yeah.
that we are behaving and fully certified. So it sounds fine, and if we have to do something in-house to put the paint care location on the map, we can do that. Okay, so I'll check with Steve, see a good location, then we'll hear back from DEP, but what I would like then, unless anybody has any other thoughts, would then a motion to authorize me to sign the paint care, the up-to-date paint care contract.
I'll move that.
Is there a second?
Second time.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Next is the Cream Hill Lake Study Group. They are meeting with the UConn professor, Knocklin, to calibrate and start taking measurements of Cream Hill Lakes next week. So Nancy Berry told me that she has been soliciting donations to help with this study. So I asked Barbara Herbst, our financial officer, how do we make that happen? And she said what we should do tonight is make a Cream Hill Lake Study Group activity funds, so that way the town can receive money and then disperse it with our permission and approval in ways to publicize and further the work of this study. So she has been talking to neighbors and concerned people, and she's gotten a good response on people that said they would donate money towards the study. So I'll make that motion that we set up a Green Hill Lake Study Group Activity Fund. Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Next, why I had Stan McMillan and Chief Scoville here, I talked about the water tank cistern in Cornwall Bridge, as they have experienced. So what they suggested, which surprised me, but that's not hard to do, was putting it in the green, in the triangle. Because that way the truck, apparently hooking onto these things, getting trucks to this, if we put in a 10,000 gallon tank, you're basically having the equivalent of 5 tankers there and having easy access to it. They felt the green would be a better location. This would be below ground, so the only thing, basically you'd have a hydrant sticking out by the roadside of the green, somewhere near the point by the store. So they felt that would give better access than the somewhat congested site at the firehouse. And I can get a more detailed explanation of the benefits of each site, but that was something that they threw out, and I think it would be a good priority to get that project going again this
Well, it's
summer.
it's just interesting thought. Certainly what comes to mind is that the town owns the firehouse site.
Right.
It can control what goes on there with the correct permitting.
Yep.
We don't own the green, and would have to get permission from the state, which is always, or can be.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Well, we'd have to get permission from them
Right.
to dig a giant hole and drop a tank in there. Not that we can't, I'm not saying we could or couldn't, but the state, the state would get involved, and that has
Right.
potential, could potentially
It could.
be a problem.
I think a lot of that's gonna be DOT right-of-ways out of either here or Thomaston. So
Well,
sometimes,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, we can also, we've got to talk to them somewhat about our sidewalks and things.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I just wanted to broach the subject, wanted to put it on our
sure, well,
plate
it's,
for the summer, fall, and then to let you know that this idea came up, and Stan said, yeah, it has this advantage, you can do this, and this, and I said, yeah, so I'll get you a better explanation than that.
You could have
I'll
more
be
than one
advanced.
tanker around.
Right, so they just felt, then you could turn around, you could set them up, and it just, they wouldn't get jammed up the way they would in the parking lot. You'd be able to line the empties up in one road, and the ones to be filled in another spot, and it wouldn't be hugely visibly obtrusive.
Well, yeah, but you might have to take down a number of trees.
You might, but I looked at the point a little bit, and out at that point,
Yeah, there's some dead trees.
there's some, well, there are some dead trees, but there's also there's quite a bit of open space on the point.
And the other
So-
thing is that I remember when we had the issue around doing something there, was the state didn't want anything within 30 feet of the edge of the green because they didn't want cars to run into it. They felt that would cause an accident, so the hydrant would have to be in
It
a
may,
certain distance
but they
from
may
the
have a
road.
different feeling about
Public
hydrants.
safety.
So anyway,
How,
Right.
is it still a 10,000 gallon tank?
well, that's the other thing too,
How many
apparently.
tanker loads are we talking about that it's really an issue to?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I'm
it
just,
depends on the cost of the
it makes
tank.
sense when you're talking about a relay, but if it's gonna run out the tank really quickly, you know, it's the first attack.
Anyway, I'm
Yeah.
just saying those two very seasoned fire people thought
Makes sense.
this was an advantageous place, and I said maybe we should look at both places. And no, the other thing too is I thought about putting it back in the bank. You know, you're a little tight at Cornwall Bridge. He said also you can't drive over it, may be a problem. If you're near the parking lot in Cornwall Bridge, then you
Right.
go back into the bank, and there's a drain that drains from behind the firehouse around there to the road. So it's not necessarily easy digging in there. Plus, everything would have to be at least 4 feet cover, and there's, you know, freezing issues. If you bury it in the bank, you then have to bury it back into the bank. So,
You can't drive over it?
as they said, it's plastic, it's not a heavy duty deal. So there's one at Cougarman, and that's like in the lawn, you know, as you go
Right.
into the left,
Right.
which is the perfect spot, because you don't have to drive over there. But, anyway, with your permission, I'll at least find out how much permitting needs to be done, whether the DOT local can do it, who are usually very quick on doing stuff, as long
Well,
as we...
as is true with many things, you have a perception of how something can happen, and then when the reality of going there, just like you're saying, it could be a problem at the firehouse. It seems like a great site, but maybe it's not a good site,
Right.
because it's a parking problem, it's an access problem, it's a depth problem, there could be a bunch of issues. Sounds like it wouldn't work at all on the green, but maybe it would be
Right.
great. So, sure, look into it, and then
You
if we're
float
gonna-
an idea, you punch a few holes in it, you make it better, and then
Yeah,
you
yeah.
come up with the best.
Look at all
There
the
you go.
possible places that you could put it in,
Right.
in Cornwall Bridge, and,
But I'd like to get something going in this
sure,
season,
sure.
so.
Um,
But anyway, that won't, we're not digging tomorrow, so. Okay, and again, maybe we can look at that as we're touring. All right, last addition is purchase of the Colby parcel next to the firehouse. So that's done, closed, recorded, ready to go. So anyway, that's good. Again, I think what I'll do is I'll write a note with your approval, or, I mean, I'll just write a note thanking Bill, and we're glad to get it done. Thank, you know, and thank people for Cornwall too, paying the money, but I think it's good to get it done as a
Sure, no,
long-term
I think it's a,
investment for the town.
it'd be great to thank Bill for being cooperative and
Right.
selling us the property.
And that was 12/5.
Yeah. And the fire department used it for a long time without any rent or any problems for them. So. Okay, next we have litigation, tax delinquent strategy. I'll make a motion, we go into executive session.
Motion to discuss both ones?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.